All right, so welcome everybody. It's 4:01. Welcome to this first town hall of 2023 with an auspicious subject, which is a group of women who paddled very, very hard a number of years ago in the Na Wahine Molokai race. And there are a number of people here that I need to introduce first. But before I say anything further, I just want to say that this town hall is being recorded. And the chair of our board, Ron Chin, is just going to say a few legal things about that. And then we'll pass the torch over to Graham to make initial introductions. So my name's Eric Ages. I'll be running some of the buttons and bells and whistles behind the scenes here. And then making this 2023 October Town Hall available to the public after this meeting has concluded. So I hope you all have a great time, and I'm going to pass the torch over to Ron Chin, who is the chair of the Canadian Outrigger Racing Association. So Ron, over to you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks everyone for joining us for this town hall. It's the first of the fall, and we hope to have a few more before the end of the year. And thanks especially to Graham Galvez for getting the group together from the 1985 Canadian women's crew for the Na Wahine o Kekai Outrigger canoe race, the Molokai race. The aspects that Eric asked me to mention are that if you make a comment on the video today, you are being recorded, and the video will be posted on the CORA website. So by making a comment or continuing to be on the website, on the call, you're consenting to being posted on the CORA website, and you won't receive any consideration for that, for any contributions that you make. So no royalties. Okay, and so I think that I'll just hand this over back to Graham or Eric to introduce the participants.
Thanks, Ron. So Graham is another board director of the of CORA, and Graham really has stick-handled these archival, historical, sort of a celebration of outrigger in Canada over really its relatively short history. So Graham, over to you to introduce these wonderful ladies and their incredible accomplishments. So Graham, over to you.
Well, I'm going to buy a little time before I do these introductions, because actually I'm quite overwhelmed at having met many of these ladies virtually in a dress rehearsal in September. I do need to thank a number of people first. We all thank everybody. It's sort of this mutual admiration society thing. And I want to thank Ruth Matson. If you can see me, I am clicking a book called Shack Island, which she wrote and autographed and sent it to me, and it's an incredible capture of canoeing history in British Columbia. And I also have a copy of the VCKC 50 Years of Paddling, and I want to thank the VCK executive, Dave Hill, Don Monroe, because this book filled in so many blanks. I'll do that again here. VCKC 50 Years. That gave us the story of David Hill, of Norm MacDonald, of Janice Henderson, and the Burrard, because that story, the Burrard, is what got us to where we are here today. Where are my notes? Yes. And so, hello, Heather Taylor. I'm just about to thank you immensely for what you just did. This story happened 38 years ago, and we knew nothing about it until about COVID. Remember COVID, March 2020? And the whole CORA board is like, well, there's no racing. What are we going to do? Let's just call people and talk history. And some point during that time, I ended up having an interview with Heather Taylor. And I'm capturing this phenomenal history. She's sending me all these photos and the names and the dates of the Team Canada in the 1990s. And I go, Heather Taylor, two last questions. Who are your influences? And what do you know about the Burrard? And she goes, oh, Ruth Matson, my major influence. Like, never heard of her. I'll make a note. We'll track her down. And the Burrard, oh, it's in Jackie Bell's backyard. Who's Jackie Bell? And with Jackie Bell. And I'm talking to Jackie Bell, and she goes, oh, I'll go out in the back 40 and I'll take some photos of the Burrard. It's upside down in my back 40. And we use the Ayakus and the Ama for my wedding arch. I'm like, well, that's great. Now we know where the boat ended up. Where did it come from? And she goes, oh, Annie Boulding brought it up from California. I'm like, Boulding? Where do I find her? And she, oh, here's her contact information. So I reach out to Annie Boulding. I said, Annie Boulding, I'm from CORA. We're trying to track down the Burrard. I hear you brought it up from California. And she goes, oh, yeah, 1985. I'm doing the Molokai Na Wahine with like Sheila Taylor and Joanne Woods and all these other stellar women from all across Canada. And Ruth Matson is steering. I'm like, who's Ruth Matson? How do I find her? And Annie Boulding connects me with Ruth Matson. And like 2 years later, Ruth is off to England to do the world sprints with Team Canada in London. And I'm like, we got to talk. And she starts sending me stuff. She's sending me photos. She sends me I'm going to say the bikini op, the Waikiki Beach photo op. And she sends me photos of the 1981 Blazing Paddles crew, like Alan Matson and Bob Strang and all these people and Lon Simmons. And she's sending me names. And I'm like, next thing you know, I'm reaching out to like the Saskatoon Hall of Fame historian and on Facebook to Chadwick's and Prince George. And next thing you know, we got almost everybody together. And so Ruth Matson really brought this thing together. And Dave Hill and Don Monroe at VCKC were finally able to connect me with Janice, Henderson, Kyle up there in Bella Coola. And I cannot say enough to thank the paddling community for bringing all these people together, because it just didn't happen automatically. A lot of people just like were able to connect one another with our historical committee. And so, I'm just looking at my notes. And so,
we're all looking at your notes.
you can't look at my notes. No, what you're seeing there is the presentation material. And I'm trying to time box this so I get everything I need to say done within 10 to 15 minutes here. We had a dress rehearsal in September with most of the crew. And there was one point that came up that I really hadn't recognized the significance of until right then and there. And that was that although most of the crew were marathon canoe paddlers, almost half the crew were Canadian National Whitewater paddlers. And that for me was eye-opening, because when we were doing the research on Annie Boulding for her Hall of Fame nomination, we stumbled across a video. And so, Eric, can you play back that video from Reuters right now? Because for me, this was scary. Like, I could not.
Embarrassed, Annie.
This could be worse than the bikini picture.
This isn't a bikini picture, but it's a pretty great little clip. So just stand by for this 1 second.
I know it's entering in a hole probably, right? Or something, right?
Jean-Pierre?
This is Annie Boulding in her heyday, when a 12-foot swell in the Kaiwi Channel is nothing.
Sorry.
You'll find it, Eric. You're good at this.
Here we go. We got it.
Ah, there she is.
Ready?
Number jersey 113 is Annie Boulding.
Oh, that's Luckbill, isn't it? Who is that?
Oh, you went too far, Eric.
Oh, did I?
There she is.
There's Annie.
There's Annie.
Nice.
Nice.
Grace, right? Grace.
Whoa.
Oh,
And then a whole bunch of other people. But
Joanne, where is that? Where is that, Joanne?
This
I'm
is
not sure.
Yugoslavia, 1984. Some
Oh,
event.
oh, I remember that was horrible. We had to come down a dam and oh yeah, I was trying
Yeah.
to pay money so they'd go to Austria for that smaller water. It was the first part with the dam was really scary and lots of underground rebar if you tipped your boat.
was.
Oh, boy.
I can't believe you found that. It was so see that hole right there, that was like that's Patrice, I think.
Gagnon?
Patrice Gagnon.
Is that me?
I know there wasn't very many of us at that race. You guys had some downriver something
Oh, he
somewhere.
totally disappears in that gate, eh?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Well, oh wow.
I had a boat like that once.
So the key thing here, looking at this video, is that this is what almost half the crew brought to Molokai, was this ability to look at whitewater, stare it in the face, brace. They didn't have a helmet in Molokai. They didn't need one. But still, this is amazing that half the crew had this experience of being able to race down a river into white water with a helmet, knowing how to do a battle roll and brace and get back up and go through the gates again. And I'm going to let Sheila talk about that when we get to, like, I think it's topic number 4 or 5. So let's do a quick run through on this crew. I've got my notes here somewhere. And I know this is being recorded, so I do want to say this right now. 1975 was the first time that women were allowed by the men to go from Molokai to Oahu. And Auntie Rosie Lum was one of those 36 women who made that first crossing. And in 1979, it became official. Molokai Na Wahine became official in 1979. And then there was a year it got missed. And so this crew here did the 5th annual Molokai Na Wahine crossing. And 3 key things that came away from the discussions with these ladies and the research. And one was that in 1985, there are no outriggers in Canada. There's no 6s. These women are training in Voyager canoes, marathon canoes, C1s, K1s, whitewater, slalom, sprint, you name it. The second thing is they didn't train as a team. They were all over Canada, Saskatoon, Prince George, Nanaimo, Victoria, Vancouver, Richmond, all over the place. It was almost like the first time they ever met each other collectively was in Oahu at the Isle of Wight Canal for water changes. And they had no coaching. No team coach, no club coach. They showed up at Oahu, and there's Albert Kekai, the legendary, one of the original Waikiki Beach Boys, who's going to coach them. And they're doing their first ever water changes ever in the Isle of Wight Canal before they go out in the ocean. So this is a pretty incredible achievement that these women finished 5th place overall, given that they were the first ever Canadian women to go to this event, that they had no outriggers to train in, they didn't meet each other, and they had no team coaching. And so here's a quick rundown on who was in that crew. And so my cliff notes. You just had Annie Boulding. She was going down the Yugoslavia whitewater course. And she was part of the Canadian national team from 75 to 87. She was training with Burnaby Canoe and Kayak Club. She brought, as I understand it, she didn't exactly bring the first OC6 to Canada, but she was an integral part in bringing that first OC6 to Canada, the Burrard. And then she founded the Comox Valley Racing Canoe Club. It's got an CVCRC, something like that. And she was at the first time Canada went to Team Canada sprint racing in Sacramento. And so, and she just came back from Samoa with hardware at the World Championships. Stop. She just keeps paddling and racing and winning. So, Annie, thanks to have you here. Cathy Nixon, I don't know if she's going to join us today or not. She is in the Saskatoon Hall of Fame for 2 events, synchronized swimming and marathon canoe racing. In '81, her and Karen Dumas won the first time ever Canadian National Marathon Canoe Championships, and then they repeated in '82. 1985, she races with this crew in Hawaii. 1986, Expo, she comes out and wins the Louis Riel Relay in Marathon Canoe. Diane Chippindale was the team manager. We have not been able to find her. It's actually in the Q&A. And by the way, if you have questions you want to ask anybody on this team, throw them into the chat and we will look at those towards the end of the session. One of the questions we're asking is, Diane Chippindale is the only person we couldn't find. Gail Timmer, her and Ruth and Cathy Gallagher go back forever. Apparently Gail Timmer is still paddling. And I'm hoping to get a little bit more details on her. Janice, Henderson, Kyle, she was with VCKC. She raced marathon canoe with Don Monroe. Bella Cooler right now. She sent me some great stories about she's paddling with First Nations communities up there. We're still trying to get more information on every member from the crew. Joanne Woods, after she did this race with the Molokai Na Wahine crew, she went on to the 1992 Barcelona Summer Olympics. I think she finished 8th overall in the K1 event. Cathy Gallagher. Cathy Gallagher Strang. There's a connection there. Ruth Matson is connected to Alan Matson. Cathy Gallagher was connected to Bob Strang. Bob Strang and Ruth and Alan Matson were part of the Blazing Paddles Canadian. We had an article on Team Cascadia, and the Canadians and the Americans were forming crews back then in the early 1980s. And this is like Ron Simmons and a whole bunch of guys who went to Molokai in 1981, 1982, all part of this family from the island. Leanne Hodgkinson has passed away. The one member we have no longer with us in 1993. Ruth Matson, as we said, author of Shack Island, put together this first crew for Molokai Na Wahine, went back in 1990, steered the NIMO Just for Kicks cruise to 3 CORA distance championships, a three-peat, 2011 to 2013, went to Windsor, racked up some hardware there, went to Samoa, racked up some hardware there, and was the pivotal person in bringing this together in terms of providing names and photos and dates and all this other stuff. So a key player, Sheila Chadwick Cupp, is from Prince George, sorry, and was racing marathon canoe in this race down the crazy race. We have video of that as well. Big names like Ron Williams and Daryl Spencer are all part of that Northern BC marathon canoe racing contingent. Sheila Taylor, University of Alberta, ended up at the 1988 Seoul Olympics, finishing 8th in the K2 and making to the semifinals in the K4 500 meters. now in Naramata. We have a little blurb on Albert Robert Kekai, but we actually have a mention of him from Auntie Rosie Lum. Auntie can't make it. This was one of the situations where she was good for all the dates until today. And Ron, no, Eric, can you play that text to speech? We have her words in print, but we were able to take what she said and run it through a pretty good impersonator so that we could listen to her words to the crew. So Eric, can you play back that MP3?
Yeah, just bear with me 1 second. Here we go.
Aloha. I have a wedding to attend. Aloha. I
Just
have a
wait.
wedding to attend on the 15th.
Sorry, 1 second. Bear with me. All right, here we go. Share.
Of October, and won't be able to attend the Zoom get-together. You've requested I share my association with Rabbit Kekai and insights on my officiating observations of the race. My association with Rabbit goes back to when I was 11 years old. I grew up in Waikiki and would hang out at the beach with neighborhood friends. Rabbit was a mentor to many of us, teaching us how to surf and coached us in canoe paddling. He was a paddler coach for Huinalu Canoe Club throughout the 1950s and 60s. Head coach of Huinalu Canoe Club, John D. Kaupico, mentored many of the old-time beach boys of the early 1940s 60s. Rabbit also coached me as a teenager while paddling for Waikiki Surf Club, then later across the Molokai Channel along with Nappy Napoleon. It was a wonderful experience for me to be an official, at the same time watching my old coach, mentoring women from Canada. As a board member of Na Wahine o Kekai, and one of the many women that did the first crossing of the Kaiwi Channel in 1975, it always gave me a sense of pride to come across the channel as an official. The dedication of all the women to successfully complete the journey and endure the many sacrifices was and is amazing. Of course, in particular, the paddles, missed hook leg mid-ocean changes, and strokes per minute, the camaraderie, the aches and pains, but nevertheless pushing through. Now 30 years later, so much has changed, but the desire and dedication will never change to want the experience of crossing the channel. I have been so blessed to have shared the love of canoe paddling with all my children and grandchildren. The legacy continues with my daughter and her Bradley teammates capturing 10 Na Wahine titles. Many years have passed, but I want to say mahalo to all the ladies and honor the memory of Rabbit Kekai. Mahalo, malamapono, thank you. Take very good care, Rosie Lum, Auntie Rosie.
Wow. Whoa.
Wow.
That's pretty moving.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we tried to do our best to impersonate her voice. It's tough to find somebody with an AI who can actually pronounce Hawaiian words like Kaiwi and Molokai correctly. So apologies for the poor impersonation of her words, but her words were sincere. And she, as she noted, it was her niece's wedding that she had to attend to right now. But her words speak highly of this crew. And so we have a few photos here. We'll just whip through them really quickly so we can get to the topics. This is the photo and the article that was
Wow.
earlier about the Canadians have no business doing this race, right? But still, 5th place overall, not bad. It's inside the Olawai Canal doing a little practice, and they actually got 5 of the 6 names in the canoe right, which is not bad. So can you scroll down a little bit there, Eric? A certificate for completing the course. I never got a certificate for completing the course. I think that went away after a certain time, but this is nice.
Yeah,
And I was impressed that the crew would go to their photo catalog, their shoe boxes, and pull stuff out and take photos and send it to me so we could all collect this history together. the first water change in the all the way for the crew on the left side, and there's Albert Rabbit Kekai and Ruth Matson cozying up next to each other on the right side. I thought this was in Oahu. Apparently, this was in Molokai, and we have the names at the bottom. This is all recorded in the in our documentary, our rockumentary. Yes, 1985. That's Annie Boulding kind of standing up on the right side, leaning and trying to make sure she gets on the in the photo. All the support guys, Albert Kekai surrounded. That's the rig. Yeah, you can scroll on there, Eric. This is the rigging at Halealono on the left. On the right side, we've got, oh my God, I can't even read my own.
I can't read it either.
Leanne,
Leanne, Joanne, and Ruth.
Joanne.
Yeah.
And Ruth. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
And let's scroll down a little bit. The finish line.
The finish.
The whistlers rolling into Diamond, Waikiki Beach here. And we still can't figure out who's in the finishing crew, but I'm sure, oh yes, the Waikiki Beach. And I believe this is on Ruth Matson's wall behind her somewhere. Yes. And this is when we're able to tie it all together. We were able to go, yes, these are 10 to 11 of the top Canadian women paddlers during that time, showing the world their stuff. And so I really appreciate the women going, yeah, we're okay with you including this in our rockumentary here. What else we got? Okay, the top topics. And so can you zoom in a little bit, Eric? My eyesight is gone. There we go. Okay, so our first question is, what was the inspiration, motivation, attraction? I'm going to kind of ask Ruth and Annie to lead this one because most of the feedback I got around this topic was from them. The next topic is, what was recruitment like in 1985? There's no internet. There's no email. Like, are you guys spinning the rotary dial on the phone and calling each other? The third question was, what was training like, given that Voyager canoes and marathon canoes and C1s and K1s? How do you train for a 42-mile open ocean crossing? The fourth question is Albert Rabbit Kekai? And it seems that Annie kind of knew him the best, and we heard a little bit from Rosie Lum about him. But the man was a legend, and that this crew was able to score him as a coach was incredible. And the fifth question, what was it like, all of you showing up in Oahu for the first time and getting to know each other and preparing for this race? What was that like? And then the last question was recollections. And on point number 5, I'm going to kind of ask Sheila Taylor to talk about this a bit, because she was the one who brought up this synergy between the marathon canoe paddlers and the whitewater paddlers, and how that enabled them to go through the washing machine and brace and get across the worst part of the channel and blow past a lot of the crews. And then the sixth question is the race itself. And I'm gonna ask Joanne Woods to take the lead on this question, because she and I walked through the whole race. I was in her shoes, kind of, ice packs on the head. And Joanne, if you could kind of take the lead on that sixth question. So here we are at 4:30, not bad. So let's go to the first topic, and let's talk about Ruth, Annie, anybody else who wants to join in. Tell us about how this whole thing came together, inspiration, motivation, what drove this? I'll shut up now.
Ruth, you gonna go first?
Well, I think it was because the guys were going, and I know Cathy and I were there when the men were racing the year or 2 years before, and it's like, hey, they're having all the fun. Like, we can do this. And we probably met Rabbit kind of then, because he was coaching the men's team. And we were all working hard and paddling hard, and you know, what guys can do, we could do just as well, maybe better.
Amen.
Are you wondering about this is the question about the influences, right? That Graham, this first question we're on, who influenced us to want to do this?
Yeah.
Is
Great way to interpret
yeah,
that.
I was talking to Ruth on the ferry yesterday, and she was saying when she'd gone over with her husband in 1981 or something that they'd done the crossing with Blazing Paddles, and you got a chance to see them training and maybe even get out with them.
Well,
And I know
yeah.
when I went over before I was married with all the Flatwater guys in 1983, we were lucky they were allowed to bring their girlfriends along, and we went along, and there was two escort boats. So we basically got to watch them in a very competitive race, racing the COA division and winning the COA division all the way across. And for me, I was just climbing the walls with excitement of what an amazing adventure and undertaking this would be. To me, it just seemed like, wow, this isn't just a 3-minute race. This is like you start in the morning, you do a prayer. There's all this cultural stuff the day before. There's like skits you put on. It was a really, really cool thing. And I really wanted to do it. And then I think somebody put us in touch with Ruth when she had a group of marathon paddlers, maybe Hugh Fisher, because your kids were doing some kayaking.
He had been over coaching.
Yeah, and I think that I also heard a lot about the race from a girl that was going to UBC at the time, Sue Holloway, a Flatwater paddler, and she also we had 2 Swedish girls with us that Sheila might have known. They were friends of Hugh Fisher's, and they came across in 1983 as well. They were over there preparing for the women's or had been in the women's race. So there were some people we met that had come up to Burnaby Lake, like Sheila Conover, Sue Holloway, and there was a marathon girl called Joanne that got phoned from the US she was one of the first Canadian women that got to go with US team. And I think she went previous to 85 with a different US marathon team. And she's a doctor, and Lise Fortan knows her name, I think. But anyway, these were all people that we'd heard about that had the big adventure. And we just wanted to climb aboard, just like Ruth said. It just sounded like
I was on an escort boat when Alan, the Blazing Paddles, went over, and it's like, I kind of got seasick too. That's why you want to stay in the boat, not the escort boat. But it was like, wow, this is just amazing, and all the volume of boats, and yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, and that was, and I think the reason that we got put together, the person that was the glue that just like it's got this province going, it's people like Hugh Fisher, like he knew when I got off the boat, because I wasn't in the start of the finish crew, but I paddled a lot in the middle. But I got off the boat. If I hadn't run into Billy Whitford to say, yeah, it was really hard to train with Hugh Fisher, and we got out a couple of times, and we were in the sliding from side to side in the Voyager canoes, and it didn't, it's 6 feet wide in the middle, and it doesn't feel very much like coming over and paddling outriggers. But we did everything we could with Hugh. But he sort of had his finger in all the paddling pots, and he was also worked at Sport BC. And when he ran into my old whitewater coach, and I had seen Billy getting off the boat in Waikiki, and he said, I have a boat in California. I told Hugh that because he was the man, he knew everybody. And then Hugh talked to my whitewater coach, Brian, who was going to California, and they sawed that Burrard in half and threw it on top of his Winnebago. Didn't even worry about whether they could ever put it back together. They just blast it on back together. So that's how we got the old Burrard. That's why it weighed so much.
Brian.
Yeah, so that was what happened there. But it was a smaller amount of people involved, so you tended to know people, and people who did one race would do different kinds of racing because there wasn't that many people canoeing. Like, we were pretty sad we couldn't drum up Heather Taylor, but she'd already gone north and done her racing for the year because she was paddling back then, and we were hoping that she'd got this job way up north. So we were short of girls, racing with 10 instead of 12. Nobody would go with us in Hawaii because we were unproven over there, right? Nobody wanted to join us. They're like, no, not standing out in the middle of it, they didn't want to be out in the middle of the channel for 6 hours upside down. And when I looked at the old pictures, I was pretty impressed that we paddled those boats across, because they're tiny little arms, and the boat is kind of smaller too. So I feel like the waves might have felt even bigger with the lower volume of boat and the smaller arms.
I remember when you guys, the big waves are coming, and Cathy and whoever was sitting number 2, the whole front of the boat would just go down under the waves, and I'd wait and see when it finally came back up, if they're still there or not. If, okay, here, okay, have we still got, are they still, oh yeah, they're still there again. Because you never knew if they were going to just get knocked off.
And I remember Leanne saying that too, where she's like calling out, I can't reach the water at Lyle Point.
I remember that.
Somebody's like, just stay in time, just keep us in time, or someone yelled back.
Just in the air, right? I remember that.
Make it till you make it, just keep paddling. It was funny. It was funny. But it was a great adventure, and that, I think, made it just so wonderful.
Yeah, it was an adventure.
First big adventure, you know, really, really awesome.
All right. Let's talk another topic. Recruitment. How on earth did you find all of each other? Saskatoon, Prince George, Comox, Nanaimo, Victoria. How on earth did you find these 10 women, plus your team captain?
Well, I think Annie spoke to it when she said it was a smaller community. And we all knew each other. We didn't know the whitewater paddlers as much, but the marathon and the Voyager, and you just sort of mingled together. And sometimes there was barbecues or something after a race, but we knew of each other. If we didn't know each other, we knew of each other. And it was a smaller community, but a very tough community.
The whitewater paddlers, we were often at training camps together. We spent almost every weekend training up in Chilliwack, and we knew each other from when we were on the race circuit. And you know, sometimes we were roommates sharing. I mean, definitely. Even today, if I go anywhere with the whitewater girls, I fall asleep promptly because I've stayed with them in 8 different countries and all different hotel rooms and cars and, you know, cow fields, camping and everything. So bomb shelters. So it was easy to round people up. We couldn't convince everybody's partners or husbands to let them join the fun, but otherwise we got whoever we could talk into it, because we were still short. At that point, they were allowed to have 12. And even in Hawaii, we were unable to drum up any additional members. Remember that, Ruth? We were wondering about a couple more people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't think they'd let us race without the full crew. You know, with the 2 missing.
I remember well that I was just finishing up a season of whitewater rafting and hard boating on the Ottawa River, and I get this phone call. It's in the office. Got a phone call, and it's Annie. She says, Sheila, you got to come to this race. She starts telling me about it. I go, okay. Stop everything. Go back west. I wasn't living back east, but I was planning on going back west sooner or later, but that made it sooner.
And I had never even heard of outrigger canoe racing or anything like that. And Annie calls me or talks to me. You guys come try this outrigger canoe race. It'll be awesome. It'll be so much fun. They need whitewater paddlers who know how to race. You know, like, you gotta come. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
That's what charge cards are for.
Yeah, it was really interesting because we had the 2 different groups, and I think it kind of complemented each other because we felt really comfortable with spray decks tied in tight to the boat, and the marathon paddlers felt really, you know, they'd been paddling, you know, the Hayak and just let you know, like Ruth was just an Iron Woman back then. She was paddling 8-hour races on the Fraser. She did 10 crossings between Nanaimo and Vancouver, raising money for the telethon. She ironed that race. It was the first time I'd ever seen a water system set up like that, because they didn't have commercial ones back then. She'd made her own water system. She's drinking the flat Coke, eating the potatoes in the morning, and she knew how to prepare for substantial distances and keeping your energy levels up without all the fancy drinks and this and that. She was doing everything that she had done with her preparations for these long races that she had previously done in marathon. So it was kind of an interesting combination, because we just loved the rough water, thinking it's really fun if we could surf and stuff, and the other guys, they just love to go all day, so it's kind of an interesting combination. Yeah,
I think there was a lack of fear and total confidence in each other as a team, and from the different expertises we brought together, somehow we just recognize and have complete confidence in our crew.
Yeah, and I think Rabbit too, Ruth, don't you think he really pushed us hard in the week? Like, I don't think we normally would have trained that hard the week before Molokai, but because we were young and we've been training all summer, and he was a smart guy with paddling, he's like, well, I can see that they don't seem to be suffering here, so we'll just take another run up and down. I remember doing 12 alloy trying to smooth ourselves out, because we were, had to do our blending, and he just didn't seem to care that it was getting close to the race. He figured it was more important that we figured that out. That's what I remember. Yeah. He wanted us to just keep going. And I remember I was going to be the backup steersman. Clearly he thought Ruth was going to go the whole way, because I think I got to try it for about 15 minutes just outside the alloy just to see if I could make the boat go straight. And once I could, it was like, okay, yeah, you're good, you're the backup steersperson. And Ruth, I think he had full confidence that Ruth was going to make it across. So that was nice that he had confidence in us too, I think.
Yeah, it must have had a lot to do with him.
Yeah. I've thought of a few funny things about Rabbit. Like he got us out on a sailboat. He knew everybody down there. He got us these hats that had these covers at the back, or some of them had covers where
it's on the back of the wall behind Ruth. There it is. I noticed it.
Got the signatures.
Totally, I saw it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
He was always sort of he even got Sheila and I surfing on a longboard the day after the race, which was hilarious because we could barely lift our arms. We were just like, oh, how are we gonna get out?
Yeah. He took Ruth and I out too, and we were the same.
Yeah, it was hard. Like,
it was hard.
Like, super keen when you were that sore and tired. But it was very fun that he was even interested in us having that adventure,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we were lucky we ran into him a few times later on, once over at the Queen Lily and stuff. He seemed to be involved in canoeing for a while afterwards too. He didn't seem to quit that year or anything. Oh, and also he put a big hunk of lead on our ama. I was reading about the how we didn't flip, Graham.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember this, but we're on the beach there, and he's got this big sort of layer of lead, and he figured. Do you remember this, Ruth? That if he put it on,
I do. Yeah,
it wouldn't matter how rough it was, because it would help us keep the ama down. So. Yeah, I think that's the only time I raced with lead on my ama, but it was under the circumstances a really great
workout all the way over.
It was a really Anyways,
it was like a sheet, and he rolled it around.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You are all segueing into the next part, but this is okay. So tell me about your training, please. You're not training as a team. You're training as individuals. Like you said, the Voyagers, the Marathon Canoes, C1K ones. And I guess, you get a phone call at the end of the season from Ruth says, hey, let's go to Molokai. And you're like, yeah, let's do that. But what are you thinking about? Like, you're going to be out in the middle of the open ocean, 42 miles. You can't see land in either direction. What do you think about in terms of your training to do a race that you've never done before? What's that look like in your mind when you're out there? Or are you just like, okay, I'll go down the river for 50 miles and paddle, and I'll go through white water for 20 miles. What was your training like in preparation for something like this before you got to Hawaii?
Well, there was a big racing season for starters, right? Everyone had
Totally.
been racing.
World Championships.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we had
National.
been training on the daily basis and, you know, doing harder weeks and easier weeks. And for the whitewater, we were doing a couple sessions a day. And Sheila did a more long distance version of the whitewater with the wild water and downriver paddling. And Joanne and I were doing more the slalom gates and stuff. But our races were like 2.5, 3.5 minutes, between 2.5 and 3.5 minutes. And, you know, with 25, 30 gates back then. But we also did lots of stuff in the gym. We did some distance paddles in downriver boats as well. But nothing to the extent of the distance that these marathoners have done with the kind of training they've done and the racing they've done. You know, they were doing longer duration races and distance races than us.
I think our marathon races were generally 3 to 4 hours, and often we had portages in them.
Yeah, almost always.
Paddle, get the canoe and get running. So we had to do a lot of land training for this, dry land, running, weightlifting. And I think our training week was probably, 5 days a week, Cathy?
Yes.
Yeah, 5 days a week. And maybe race on the other day. But our races were much longer than any of the races are now. Most of them.
Yeah.
That's why they call them marathon, eh? They were long.
Yeah. And you had to go upriver.
So that's you, Gail Timmer. I haven't thought about what this would be involved, because like when we're doing outrigger training, quite often we'll paddle a long distance out into something or with something and turn around and come back with something or against something. So if you're doing marathon canoe training, are you actually doing that? Are you paddling upriver to start and turning around and running? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah.
Well, in Prince George, we paddle on rivers, so it was always up and down. We start going up and we come back down. And Ruth and Cathy, I was down the island with Cathy for a week or two, but we'd see each other at races. And like Ruth said, our races were 4 hours minimum with portages. And then up here where I live in Prince George, it's always river paddling. It's always upriver. And then you turn around and come home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that river, going upriver is such an intensive training thing because it's resistance. Coming down, boom, you're down, boom, it's done. But going up against the current, that's really, really hardest.
Can beat you up psychologically, right?
Well, you got to get going or you're going to get stuck in a eddy and you're gone.
And your screen turned off?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did a little bit of that in the whitewater gates too, and sometimes for a workout we'd go eddy hopping up a river because it is really good. It's really good training for the power up there. Yeah. Also, I think a lot of us did winter training with a little bit of cross training with cross country skiing. Quite a few of us were involved in that with the cross training in the winter, along with weights. And some people swam and some people did weight circuits, but you know, or a little bit of yoga, stretching, that kind of thing. But a lot of us paddled year round. So that was a pretty funny thing when you tell the Hawaiians that like literally in the whitewater world, we would be out on the river and there'd be snow on the banks.
Yeah.
We'd be doing gates and we'd be doing river runs like in very nice conditions, cold water. So
I remember moving out to BC to be able to train all year round. That's when I knew I was getting serious about paddling.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I moved
Yeah,
from Alberta up to BC so I could train all year round and paddle all winter.
Yeah. So the fitness, because you're young and training a lot, you know, yeah, we're doing a 6-hour race, but you know, give us a few minutes rest in the canoe and we're ready to go again because you just recover faster. You know, I was only 25 years old at that crossing, and and we were all, you know, in the middle of a race, you know, at the end of a racing season, sort of. So that was kind of, the fitness wasn't the problem, Graham. It was more like the paddle. And the other thing I thought was really amazing that year is one of the winning crews in that year, that there was Hawaii Outrigger. They had used the Tahitian paddles without the T-grips at the top. So they were basically holding the top hand like this around it, like it's a rake or something. And they won that, or they were right up in the top first, second, or third that year, I'm pretty sure. And they paddled with that very strange sort of, you know, the decorative paddle shape almost. It was kind of big like that, and it had this long rake handle type thing. So they thought we were kind of weird with Ruth's paddles, the bent shaft paddles, and all the kayakers. I think we had borrow paddles from you guys. We borrowed them before we left. We didn't even have those kind of paddles. And so if you'd have told us that's what you used, we would have just used whatever they had, because we were just trying to fit in and do what we were supposed to do. But we usually had the kayak paddles, right? So,
now you tell us.
Now you tell us.
Got to ask that question in all the discussions. It's like Ruth was telling me how the Blazing Paddles went to Hawaii for Molokai, and the guys had their paddles disallowed, and they have to go to a wood shop, buy wood, make paddles on the spot. Where did the Canadian women get your outrigger paddles from?
Oh,
we took ours.
Yeah, we bought. They were available in Canada, in BC. A lot of them were perhaps made by Ralph Sawyer, or who else made this paddles?
I had my Hitty.
A Hitty, yeah, Hitty.
Oh, yeah.
The one in seat 3 that Janice Kyle had, that was the lightest one in that race. It was a beauty. It was balsa wood or something.
That would have hit. That's a Hitty.
Might have been from the States. Was that a Hitty?
Hitty like ours.
Yeah.
Oh man, that thing was sweet. I like seat 3.
All right, let's go to Hawaii. Let's talk about Albert Rabbit Kekai. And I think for a lot of the people here, the name may not ring a bell. And it didn't mean anything to me until Ruth kind of gave me enough insight, and I was able to track down who he was. You know, a munitions expert in World War II, one of the original Waikiki Beach Boys, a surfer, a coach, 3 years in a row, coach Outrigger Canoe Club to medals across the channel. And yet you show up in Hawaii and he's your coach. And the dress rehearsal was great because so many of the gals had stories about him, about how he said, you need to go through the washing machine. It's the fastest way across the channel. You need to do all your changes on the upswell. You need to know how to brace. Please share some stories. Each one of you must have some personal recollections about this guy, much like Rosie provided us. So what stories do you have about when you first met him, how you found him, and what he brought to the crew?
I felt like Ruth found him. She must have known him from 1981, because you and one other girl were making contact and meeting him most often to arrange things for us and to get us organized. So I felt like you were very instrumental with connecting with Rabbit and discussing what we needed and where the training would be. Do you remember that, Ruth?
A little bit, yeah. But I think a lot of it came from the Blazing Paddles when we went, because Bruce Hawkinson was on that team and Ron Williams, who are already phenomenal paddlers. And Rabbit probably just kept talking, or I'd be asking him questions while we're watching the guys practice change. You know, we got to watch that. And then Rabbit probably planted a little seed in there too, like, you know, maybe could we come over? And if we came over, could we have a ladies team? And would you help us?
Go ahead. Way to go, Ruth.
Do you remember he would have some sort of a big fish stew waiting for us when we come in from paddling?
Yeah, I remember he just knew, he was like a legend. He knew everybody at every spot. And it was like, he was so connected. It was amazing. And I also remember the course we took relative to other crossings was way farther north. And I wondered if he liked to go up by that island that was, you know, named Rabbit Island. Way farther north than I've ever been before that year, but it really worked for us because I guess when we turned to go down, the surfing was really good.
Yeah,
Maybe
we got a good wind, good run, but getting across there was tough.
Crazy a few times.
Crazy. Yeah.
It was very, very kind of rough out in the middle, but he was good at keeping people calm and stuff. Like if he thought you were sick or whatever, and you wanted to go back in the boat, he wouldn't make you wait the 20 minutes. Sometimes he'd just switch it up a little sooner, which was nice. I like that.
All right, let's talk the meeting, arriving in Oahu. And this was a hot topic at the dress rehearsal. Shame you couldn't have been there for that, Annie. It was good. Just stories kept flying left and right. Like some of the women were talking about, there was a big dinner provided by the Americans for the Canadians coming. There was a visit to the Outrigger Canoe Club, and it was all posh. There was, and Sheila Taylor, I need you to chime in here because you were the one who brought up this synergy between the whitewater paddlers and the marathon canoe paddlers. And so I'm going to turn it over to you now. Just tell me about that time of you meeting, the dinners, first time in Hawaii for probably most of you. What was that like?
Well, I don't know whether I brought the synergy. I think we all brought the synergy. It was I remember talking to Annie and how you know, it seemed like there was going to be marathon paddlers and whitewater paddlers, like two separate groups. And in my mind, I was a little concerned about how do we get to this, right? And you know, you meet each other, and I don't know whether we were posturing or anything like that, like men do, but but it was kind of like we were trying to suss each other out. But as soon as we started paddling together, that was the real glue. And like someone was talking, Annie, I think it was talking about how the marathon paddlers could go all day, and we were the rough water specialists, and that really made an excellent combination. And I think we started to believe that as we were, like, when we went out on the flat water, we were thinking, oh no, this is, is this going to be what it's like the whole way? You know, I'm hoping they're going to get some white water, right? And but when we started to handle the big waves, and when we started to do the changes, and it just came together. I thought it came together quite well, and quite unexpectedly sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you guys think?
Oh, I agree. I think we gelled really well. Everybody, it just worked.
Yeah.
I think we were all pretty just grateful to be there. Like the water was warm, and coming from a whitewater background, where sometimes we're paddling in ice melt water, and we're out there for hours and it's rough and stuff, but there's food on the escort board, drinks, you're out in the middle, and it's warm water crashing all over you. Jumping off the boat was kind of fun. Getting back in the boat was kind of fun. Everything, there were so many parts of it were kind of exciting. I remember one time I had like my most exciting change ever, where something happened with the surfing or whatever, and I grabbed the canoe, and we either came down fast or went up fast, and I was flying through the air, and I just landed in my seat, and I'm like, holy moly, and I just grabbed the top and went. It was it actually flipped me in somehow, like into the boat. I got like kind of jumped in. And it was just completely a lack of, you know, by mistake, it worked by mistake. But the whole thing was kind of like that. We just kind of were feeling our way through the whole experience, but we were getting better at what to do as we went across. And I think that's how it gelled too, just kind of working together and keep working together.
Working together.
Yeah, and confidence in each other too, right? Confidence in each other.
Yeah,
everybody was putting their all in, and you know, and
these girls, some of them were sick, and they were getting back on the boat, and they were paddling through, like,
Joanne was sick.
Joanne had like a heat stroke because she's battling with the ice pack on her head, and I think Gail or someone didn't feel well either. Or somebody, there was a few
No,
people.
I was all right.
Were you okay? Someone else didn't
Yeah, I
feel
was
well.
okay. I just remember
Someone-
being at the start.
escort boat and was all and just wanted put me back in the outrigger, put me back in the outrigger because
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but they were constantly sick as soon as you got in the escort boat and they had to go back into the outrigger and feel well again for a while.
Yeah.
But I can't
Oh,
remember.
I thought it was nicer in the outrigger. Did you, Sheila? Because for some reason you didn't quite. It didn't feel as rough in the.
Yeah.
I've never been one to get seasick, so I didn't really notice the difference. I think the only weird thing was it's kind of funny, but we ending up having to, if you had to go to the bathroom and when you were in the support boot, you had to be over the back, remember? It's like, anyway, that was kind of big in my mind. I can't do this.
We're all getting to our sixth topic, which is the actual race. So let me back you up a little bit. Let's talk about the social scene on Oahu. You roll in. Somebody mentioned there was a big an event from the Americans put on for the Canadians. What was it like hanging out on Oahu for those first few days before you flew over? I'm assuming you flew over to Molokai. You didn't take a boat over. What was going on when you rolled into Oahu and you met Rabbit and your training, and what were you guys doing sort of socially fun?
Well, I think we were people really doubting our decision to do this race, to come over there, and they thought we were underestimating, but in truth, we actually had seen it. I'd been across and watched it with the man, and Ruth had seen it, and we did have an idea of what we were up against. So I think a lot of like Hawaiian people might have thought, these ladies, they don't have a freaking clue what they're up against, you know, but we did, and they didn't know who we were either, right? So they didn't know how to judge us. But there was a lot of doubt going on, especially with this one newspaper interview. And he kind of made quite a scathing article about us. I don't know if Ruth ever found, you sent it to me once, Ruth, but my old computer died and I don't have it, but it's basically an article where they had Sheila Taylor out of time pushing off the dock, and then it looked like we thought we'd come and get in an outrigger right before the race and do this crossing. It was as though we had just like come off the street or something to do this, instead of we're serious paddlers already. So there was a lot of doubters, but they were polite to us at the when we went to see the Americans. But I don't think that people thought we would do anything more than survive if we were lucky.
Yeah.
That's kind of what did anyone else feel that way? I'm just curious. Did you think that?
I seem to recall that too. Sorry.
Yeah, I just felt like I was a little offended at how they didn't really think that we were gonna like be okay out there.
Well, I think as you're talking, my sense is a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're the Canadians. You're the kind of like you're the dreamers."
Yeah, really. That's how it was. Like the total underestimate that you would be able to survive this experience. And I think Rosie too was the nicest person and got put on I know I'm jumping topics here, but she was the only one I think that would even agree to go on the boat with us. I don't think anyone wanted to be stuck out there for 10 hours bobbing around in the Kaiwi Channel, you know, out of control. But Rosie she drew the short stick, and she's also super nice, as you can imagine, and kind. And she was so proud of us at the end, jumping up and down, putting her hand in the air for 5th position at her husband, because I think she'd received quite a bit of scathing, scathing doubting about, gosh, poor you, Rosie, you're with those Canadians, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because she was darn proud, I'll tell you. She was just up there yelling at her husband on the beach, and she had her arms above her head. And some of you guys were in the canoe at the finish, so you didn't see how excited she was. But I was in the escort boat, and she was delighted. It was kind of cool. It made my day that Rosie was that excited.
That's
Yeah.
nice to know.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw this out that I had a lot of one-on-ones with just about everybody in the crew and Rosie as well. And something she communicated to me, which I wouldn't say floored me, but it just struck me as it was her respect for this crew, is that she was asked to be an official on that boat because your crew was considered a contender. There was some serious concern at the Molokai Na Wahine executive that you guys would be on the podium, and they wanted her, an official, on that boat with you to keep an eye on you. And she was proud when she wrote on her report card at the end, no infractions. As simple as that. You guys did not mess up. An infraction might have taken you out of the podium if you'd made the podium. The bottom line was she was quite proud to be on that support boat as an official watching you. And like you said, she was jumping up and down at the finish, like 5th place overall. And I do not believe she was a doubter. I believe she was on that boat because she believed you guys were going to be close at the top, and you were. And so for all the concerns I'm hearing from all of you about the community out there worried about the Canadians showing up, she believed in you. And I believe that rang true in her words. So we have one last topic, and we kind of delved into it a lot, and that is the race itself, start to finish, rigging that boat at Honolulu, starting that race at Molokai, running the shoreline, getting out in the open ocean, and then coming into Waikiki Beach. And Joanne Woods, I'm going to ask you to take the lead on this because you walked me through that race in your shoes. Sandals, whatever. You know, and all the
it was an
Washington.
absolutely amazing race, all in all. I mean, I think our whole team really trusted Robert's advice on whatever he said we would do with the training that we had done. And so we, you know, did the rigging, had the mass start, and hectic with all the outriggers and all the support boats that are heading out. And you know, at some point as we're getting into the waves, Rabbit made the decision to take the different route through the washing machine rather than all the other outriggers. And sort of, it seemed like in almost no time at all, we were on our own and we couldn't see any other boats or canoes around us. And it was like the waves are just getting bigger and bigger. And, you know, the changeovers that we had been doing in the training and the flatter water was like pretty simple. And then when we got into the big waves, I just remember one of the first changeovers that I was doing, I'm dropped in the water with 2 other people, and you know, you're popped up here and all of a sudden you see a wave and the canoe is pointed way over here. And so you're swimming over here to get, the next time you see the next wave, the canoe is pointed here and you're trying to swim back over here. And the next time the boat comes over the wave, it's like, it's right on top of us, dive down. And
I remember that.
It
I
just
was
again was like,
in the
that
water,
didn't
Joanne,
work.
I remember that.
That was scary, you know, get picked up and let's try it again. And it's like, okay, the second time we did it, we nailed it, we got it. And as I was paddling and we kept doing the changeovers, I just started getting really hot and not feeling good, and gee, my stomach is upset. And after a while it was like I started vomiting and I was spewing, but I kept in stroke and I never missed a stroke. I just puked in between every stroke. And Rabbit could see I wasn't doing very well. And so the next changeover, I got pulled out of the canoe and I was in the support boat, and I started to feel better there. And he says, well, it's probably, you're seasick, so we should get you back in the canoe right away. So I had some fluids, had some ice, felt better, went back in the canoe a second time, and I started throwing up again. And, you know, did my stint in the canoe till I got called out again in the support boat. And it's like they start putting ice on me, and it's like I started to feel better because I said, I feel better in the support boat and I feel worse in the outrigger canoe. And he says, oh, it's not motion, or like being seasick, you've got heat stroke. So I felt horrible because there were 2 rest periods that I got to be in the support boat while they tried to bring my body temperature down and had ice all over me. And then I was put back into the outrigger canoe. And I had a bag of ice on my hat, or underneath my hat, and the ice would sort of slowly melt. And then I had to start doing double stints in the canoe because I had double rest in the rest boat. And so Rabbit made sure that anytime there was someone coming into the canoe, they would shove a bag of ice down their bra or whatever and jump in the canoe, and then they'd throw it at the bottom of the canoe, but everyone would kick it to wherever I was, either forward or back of whoever brought it in, and I'd pick it up and put it on my head again under my hat, and then I could keep paddling. And I just remember we started catching waves. Ruth just did an amazing job of steering, and we were surfing on some of these waves, which was just so incredible. And again, we had no idea how we were doing in the race because we couldn't see anybody. And you know, as we're coming into the shoreline, we still really had no idea how we had done, because you know, you could see there were a few people on the shoreline, but you couldn't see too many other boats. And we were absolutely shocked and amazed when we arrived on shore and found out how we did. And then we started celebrating. And I mean, it was really
well said. So
it was,
well said.
I think our team was, we trusted that the marathon paddlers would really help us through with the distance training that they had, and trusted the other whitewater paddlers to help with the bracing when we needed to brace and, you know, still keep stroking. And the whole idea was just teamwork to try to stroke together. And although Annie said, you know, we knew what we were doing, well, Annie and Ruth knew what we were doing. I was clueless. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I figured Annie knew what she was doing, and if she thought I could do it, I would do it.
Yeah, that's how I felt too.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Ruth asked me and I was like, yeah, sure.
What is it?
But I remember being at the start and thinking to myself, I will never see my kids again.
Oh
Yeah, and then we started and it was that's it. But I do remember thinking that thought.
Oh my God.
Huge,
And
huge waves. Oh.
And so
Say one other thing is, I did get the nickname "Paddle Till You Puke."
You got
from
that.
race.
Honestly.
She sat behind me.
That was tough. That
Sorry,
It's okay.
and
I turned my head to the side every time I
I
was
know.
doing it. Went out.
It was just the
Ruth said
sound.
she was dodging it sometimes.
Oh,
anyway, you were saying you were coming into Waikiki, and Rosie Lum is raising her hand with 5, and she knew somehow she was fit. Was that because she was in communication with the race officials? How did she know you guys were
There
coming?
was a radio thing even then, wasn't there? I'm pretty sure they had radio. Yeah, so they might have known who was ahead. And the only reason I think we were so far over is now that I've been reading that Rabbit was a coach for Huinalu, he probably knew that whole area up by the wall and Huinalu up below Rabbit Island and Hanama Bay and all. He probably knew all the best lines through there because he was coaching up there. So that might have been one of his favorite routes, that northerly route that we took.
I think so. I think he talked about that. Like, you're going to go through the washing machine. Don't worry. Everybody else is going there. Trust me. You'll go across and then you'll come by smoking them all. But it was like, maybe you were saying, Joanne, like, there's no other boats around. Like, oh, we're really, really far back. Because you come and it's like, where are the other boats? There's just us out here.
Being a surfer, I think he had the ability to really find the lines, you know, and once we started to turn to go down, I think he was giving Ruth really good lines where to steer us, and that was helping us have a good finish. Along with I think the girls in the marathon crew were also really fit with their last 2 hours too, you know, just from the distance races.
Yeah.
Helpful
Yeah.
at the end there. Yeah, it was a very exciting day. And I think a lot of us, when we got on land, because of how it had been so rough, we kind of felt a little bit of the ocean as we were walking back to the
Dragging around on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to add that you girls were saying about the waves moving you around when you're trying to, you know, here comes the canoe and you're going to hop in, and then the canoe would be this way and it would be that way. It was so hard to line up for you guys because you lose sight of you and then you disappear in the water. And it's like, where'd they go? And then being careful that the Ayakus or the Yama didn't hit you when they did show up, or the distance between the Ayakus and the water would get really nothing, and then there'd be this huge space. Like, whoa, it was a real fun challenge. And y'all got in, y'all got out.
Yeah.
Ruth did an awesome job. Really,
You did really good. Yeah.
Suddenly just steer that channel in a completely different boat that you're not, you've only been in a week, and to iron it. I mean, she's just like my hero, just like she's Heather's hero.
Well,
Yeah, it was really impressive. It was inspirational to be part of it.
in her back and forth that she was the first woman to iron that race. That up until then, it had always been a tag team, somebody else, but she was the first woman to actually iron that race. And Ruth, can you do me a favor and reach behind you, pull that photo off the wall?
Might be shiny.
Yes, this is the photo. This is the Waikiki Beach photo right here, which had been captured for posterity. And can you tell me when this happened? Was it right after the race, or was it day after the race? What was the story on this photo? Because this is a story in itself. Classic, yes.
I think it was a day or so later. Do you girls remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was the next day.
I think so.
Maybe Rabbit had told us to come down and, you know, look fresh. Sheila's got flowers in her hair.
Fresh
flowers. They must have given us all that stuff.
It was what I think they were the lays that we got at the end of the race, weren't they?
Yeah, but we didn't look like that at the end of the race.
No, but we had the lays. We kept the lays with us. That
must have been the next day, I think.
Yeah. I think it was the next day.
It wasn't
Cathy saying the next day.
Because it's also a surfing. If
you
look at the Ama, it's a surfing outrigger from Waikiki there. It's not the race boats.
Oh.
If you look at the boat, look at the Ama, it's like a surfing one. The big thick Yaku.
I don't know, I can't see past all the beautiful women.
Yeah, I know.
It looks like there's 6 lays, so those were probably the people that finished.
Yeah.
Oh,
is that so? Didn't everybody get a lay?
Now we know who was in the finishing crew. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Cathy Nixon at the far end.
Yeah. Who's that? Joanne?
Joanne.
Leanne.
Janice.
Kyle, and
Ruth.
Sheila. Actually, there must be 8 there.
I thought we all got the lace, didn't we?
I didn't get one.
Oh.
I remember that part.
Oh.
Yeah, I think often they just are given to the people that arrive at the beach. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you pay for them ahead of time and someone picks them up for you. I can't remember that year what happened. If that was what happened.
Well, Sheila's the only one with one in her hair.
I don't know where I got that from.
Part of it. Yeah. It was a great experience. It was a wonderful experience.
It was
totally
wonderful.
I think we all came home pretty excited about, you know, going to more Outrigger events after that and getting going on Outriggers in Canada.
Maybe we
right?
should get a 60+ crew to go.
That's what I said to Annie today.
Come on, eh?
Yes, I
Yeah,
said, how about
why
a
not?
60s? How about going back to Molokai for a 60s?
Don't,
Sounds
don't
good.
Together.
This is
thought
how
they
you
canceled
sign up a crew, eh? Isn't
Right?
this how you get a crew going?
they canceled it this year, right? There was
Yes.
Fires.
Yes,
more
the
trouble
fires.
playing
Yeah.
the race run
Yeah.
there than there used with
Oh, 'cause
water
of the-
and
That was
Yeah.
because of the fires on Maui.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah, Lahaina.
for
yeah.
that.
yeah.
I have two last things I want to bring up here. One is a recognition that this crew were the pioneers, the trailblazers, the groundbreakers. These women brought outrigger canoeing to Canada. Even though many of them went on to do whitewater in the Olympics, yada, yada. Because of these 10 women and their exploits, there is just this incredible contingent of women paddlers across Canada who continue to go out and make Canada proud, whether it's IVF, Molokai, cattle, you name it. These women set the stage for outrigger canoeing for women in Canada. And there was one question in the chat, and I think it's a great question. And that was, how did Albert Rabbit Kekai react to how well you did? I would have think he'd been jumping up and down and screaming on the beach when you guys came in 5th overall. Do you recall him saying anything to you when that race was over? I mean, Rosie Lum was jumping up and down in the boat, but what did Rabbit have to say when you guys?
He's a pretty cool surfer dude, you know, Graham. They don't show their whole hand, those surfers. But I think he was pretty proud of Ruth. I'd say that.
Yeah.
And the rest of us, but I think it was quite a feat for the ironing of it and that she did. That's one of the things I remember. But just overall, he was like willing to give us surfing lessons the next day. So I think that means that he was pretty happy with us.
I think so.
Didn't make him look bad, I don't think. He was happy about that. You know, he didn't seem that worried about himself, but he was super. I think he was quite nice and pleasantly delighted for us overall.
Right. I think he had a huge pride in us that we did it. And he got us to that. But there was a lot of doubters, and that he believed in us, and we came through. And his belief probably spirited us into it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, I believe that's true too. And I've always felt like, you know, sometimes when teams get picked and people are not really that thrilled with who made the team or whatever, I think, you know, if you really just really give your belief and commit to the crew that you're working with, and just really just have their back and believe in them, that's when you can do great things together. That's my opinion. But
I
feel
agree,
that.
Annie.
You can do
Very
great
well
things
said.
together.
Very well said.
A good thing, Annie, a good thing.
Anyways, thanks a lot, Graham. That was interesting and fun.
Yes.
No,
Good to
my
see everybody.
thanks goes out to all of you for coming together for this after so long and bringing back these memories and those recollections and letting us record this for our CORA archives. And like I said, 38 years later, we've got and it's because of you. You set the bar. So I have to say, Heather, thank you again, because if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have known who any of these people were. So that's it for me. I think we've had a great session. Eric, Ron, if you have anything last you want to say before we sign off?
Graham, I think this video is going to be a lot of fun for people to watch over years to come. I'm pretty confident that this archival process that all of you are participating in is going to form the bedrock of the sport over years to come. Like, it's so impressive. And really, this kind of like cultural continuity stuff is so vitally important in a world that's, you know, changing so fast. So I want to thank all of you for remembering, in a time where you can be distracted so easily is an act of discipline. And you guys are all stars, not just in the race itself, but also in the process of remembering. So I think this video is, I think, really going to be a joy to watch. It was a joy to watch live. It's going to be a joy to watch as a kind of echo going down through time. So thanks, Graham. Excellent work. And Ron, over to you for any last words.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, it's just amazing that, you know, you went over there and, you know, after a week in the big in the waters over there, and you steered Molokai after a week in the Outrigger. That's absolutely, and ironed it. That's absolutely amazing.
And it was a week
props
of
to
dead
everybody,
calm.
to Ruth and everybody in the crew. And
Yes, we did amazing.
just to carry on the theme of recognizing, you know, the paddlers. Our next town hall is in I think about 3 weeks, the first week in November. It's to honor the CORA Hall of Fame inductees for 2023. And we'll be posting information about that on the CORA website with a video link as well. And thanks everybody for attending. This has been great. This is just, you know, just amazing that back in when I was in first year university, you know, like I grew up in Nanaimo, and Ruth and Gail, you know, I never knew any of this was going on in and around Nanaimo at the time. So that's fantastic, you know.
So folks, this video will be posted in probably a day or two, and then you and your fans, because you once that picture's broadcast of you in all your bikinis, you're going to have quite the fan club, and you can share the link to far and wide for forever and ever. So expect that. We'll let you guys know when the link is ready for sharing. And until then, have a great evening, everyone. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to shut this meeting down now. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,